My son's boss thought I was just a janitor. Until one conversation changed everything. The last thing my son's boss said before the company awards banquet was, "By next quarter, he'll either quit or I'll make sure he does." He thought he was talking to another executive. He wasn't. He was talking to a man holding a mop. My name is Henry Walker. I'm 63 years old, and for the last 4 years, I've worked the night shift as a janitor in one of the largest engineering firms in Nashville. Most people there know me as Mr. Henry, the quiet guy who empties trash cans, wipes fingerprints off conference room windows, and somehow always seems to be working after everyone else has gone home. They smile when they pass me. Some don't even look up from their phones. That's all right. After a while, you realize something about being invisible. People don't hide the truth from someone they never notice. My son Ethan started working in the same building almost a year ago. He was 29, fresh out of graduate school, and had landed the kind of engineering job people dream about. I still remember the phone call. "Dad," he said, trying to sound calm, "I got it." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just smiled. His mother would have cried. She always said Ethan would build things that lasted longer than any of us. She didn't live long enough to see it happen. Cancer took her 6 years earlier. After she was gone, retirement didn't feel much like retirement. The house became too quiet. Every room reminded me of someone who wasn't coming back. So I took the janitor job. People assumed I needed the money. The truth was, I needed somewhere to wake up every morning. Ethan never liked that I worked there. Not because he was ashamed of me, because he worried people would treat me differently if they knew I was his father. So we made an unspoken agreement. At work, I was Mr. Henry. Outside work, I was Dad. It worked surprisingly well. Every now and then I'd see him through the glass walls of the engineering department, head down, coffee getting cold beside his keyboard, completely focused. I'd never interrupt him. I'd just smile to myself and keep pushing my cart. One Tuesday evening, I was cleaning the executive conference room on the 18th floor. The meeting had ended early. Most people had already gone home. I was wiping fingerprints off the long walnut table when I heard voices in the hallway. I figured they'd walk past. Instead, the door opened. I stepped behind it automatically, not to hide, just to stay out of their way. 2 men walked inside. One was Ethan's department manager, Richard Collins. The other was the vice president of operations. Neither of them noticed me. Richard dropped a thick folder onto the table. "The presentation next month will go smoothly," he said, "as long as Ethan doesn't realize what's happening." The vice president looked uneasy. "You sure this is necessary?" Richard laughed. "You've seen the numbers. He's getting too much attention. He thinks one successful project makes him indispensable." The vice president didn't answer. Richard continued, "We'll transfer him to the satellite office after the awards banquet. 3 hours away. No major clients. No leadership opportunities. Give him 6 months. He'll quit on his own." The room went quiet. Then Richard said the sentence I still remember word for word. "By next quarter, he'll either quit or I'll make sure he does." My hand tightened around the mop handle. The vice president sighed. "What about the bridge proposal?" Richard smiled. "I'll present it." "But Ethan designed it." "He doesn't need to know that." The 2 men laughed softly, not loudly, not cruelly, just a quiet laugh of people convinced no one would ever question them. A minute later they walked out. The door clicked shut behind them. I stood there alone in that conference room for what felt like forever. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was another explanation. I wanted there to be another explanation. But I'd spent 40 years as a civil engineer before retiring. I'd sat in enough meetings to recognize office politics when I heard them. And what I'd just witnessed wasn't office politics. It was theft, not of money, of someone's future. That night, I drove home without turning on the radio. Ethan called while I was making coffee. "Everything okay, Dad?" I almost told him. The words reached my throat, then stopped. If I accuse his manager without proof, I'd sound like an overprotective father imagining conspiracies. No, if I was going to say anything, I'd need facts. Real ones. I looked out the kitchen window as the sun began to rise. For the first time in years, I wasn't just going back to work that evening to clean the building. I was going back because someone inside it believed they could steal my son's future. Simply because nobody ever noticed the janitor. People think janitors spend their nights cleaning. They're only half right. Mostly, we watch people leave pieces of themselves behind. Coffee cups with lipstick stains. Forgotten notebooks. Sticky notes that should have been shredded. Conference rooms still echoing with conversations no one thought mattered. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for the truth. The next evening, I noticed something strange. Ethan was still at his desk long after everyone else had gone home. His office light was the only one left on the engineering floor. Around 8:30, Richard Collins walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. From where I was polishing the hallway windows, I couldn't hear everything, but I could see enough. Richard smiled. He even patted Ethan on the shoulder. A fatherly gesture, the kind that looked genuine from across the room. Ethan smiled back. That hurt more than anything I'd heard the night before. Because trust is easiest to steal from people who have no reason to doubt you. A few minutes later, Richard walked away. Ethan stayed behind, working, still believing they were building something together. The following week, preparation for the company's annual awards banquet filled the building. Everyone seemed excited. Everyone, except Richard. He spent more time in executive meetings than with his own team. One Thursday night, I found a stack of presentation folders sitting on the conference table. Normally, I never looked at paperwork. It wasn't my business. As I reached to wipe the table, one folder slipped onto the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. I knelt to gather them before anyone returned. That's when I noticed something. Every engineering drawing carried Ethan's digital approval stamp. Every one. But the cover page listed only one presenter. Richard Collins. I stared at the papers. Maybe Ethan had agreed. Maybe this was normal. Then I noticed a revision history printed in the corner. Original design. Ethan Walker. Lead structural analysis. Ethan Walker. Final safety calculations. Ethan Walker. Richard's name didn't appear until the final approval page. I carefully placed every sheet back exactly as I'd found it. That wasn't proof, but it was another crack in the picture Richard wanted everyone to see. 2 nights later, something happened that erased every remaining doubt. I was emptying trash outside the executive offices when Richard walked in with another manager. Neither noticed me. Richard tossed a file into the recycling bin. "You really think you'll stay after this?" the other manager asked. Richard shrugged. "He'll have no choice. He'll lose a promotion. We'll transfer him. He'll think the company just doesn't value him." The other manager frowned. "What if he quits?" Richard smiled. "Then someone with less ambition takes his place." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't business. It was personal. The next morning, Ethan stopped by my house before work. He brought breakfast, something he hadn't done in months. We sat on the back porch eating biscuits while the neighborhood slowly woke up. He looked tired. "Dad, you ever get the feeling you're working harder than everyone else, but somehow falling behind?" I looked at him. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "I don't know. My ideas don't seem to go anywhere anymore. I keep finishing projects, and somehow they always become somebody else's presentation." I nearly dropped my coffee. He already felt it. He just couldn't explain it. I wanted to tell him everything. Right there. Instead, I asked, "Do you trust your manager?" Without hesitation, he answered, Completely. That one word broke my heart, because I knew something he didn't. Trust can be manufactured. Respect can be performed. Kindness can be rehearsed. Character can't. After Ethan left, I sat alone for almost an hour. I kept asking myself the same question. Was I protecting my son, or delaying the inevitable? Then Friday arrived. Awards banquet rehearsal. Executives moved in and out of the ballroom all afternoon. Around 6 o'clock, Richard entered carrying the same presentation folder I'd seen days earlier. He placed it on the podium. His phone rang. He answered and walked outside. The ballroom was empty, completely silent. I kept cleaning. A few seconds later, the folder slid off the podium and landed open on the floor. This time, something fell out. A handwritten notebook. Old, black leather. I recognized Ethan's handwriting immediately. He'd always sketched bridge ideas by hand before putting them on a computer. I picked it up carefully. Inside were months of calculations, design sketches, corrections, even dates. Every page proved the bridge project belonged to Ethan Long before Richard ever presented it. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. I quickly placed the notebook back inside the folder exactly where it had been. Richard walked in, grabbed the folder without looking inside, and hurried away. He never realized anything had happened. But I did. For the first time, I wasn't relying on overheard conversations anymore. Now I knew exactly what Richard intended to do. Tomorrow night, in front of 500 employees, he was going to stand on that stage, smile for the cameras, accept an award, and take credit for the work my son had spent nearly a year creating. As I switched off the ballroom lights, one thought stayed with me all the way home. Sometimes the biggest theft isn't stealing someone's paycheck. It's stealing the future they spent years building. And unless something changed before tomorrow night, that was exactly what Richard Collins was about to do. The company awards banquet was held at the Grand Magnolia Hotel. 500 employees, dozens of clients, a ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and conversations that sounded just important enough to make everyone believe they belonged there. I didn't. Not officially. I wasn't invited. Janitors never were. My shift started at 6. The banquet started at 7. Management wanted someone nearby in case a drink spilled or a trash can filled up. So while everyone else wore suits and evening dresses, I wore steel-toe boots and pushed the same gray cleaning cart I'd pushed every night for 4 years. I didn't mind. I'd learned a long time ago that a uniform tells people what to expect from you. Mine told them not to pay attention. Across the ballroom, I spotted Ethan. Dark blue suit, new tie. He looked nervous, not because he expected an award, because he honestly believed his manager had nominated him to help present the company's newest bridge project. When he saw me near the service entrance, he smiled, a small smile, the kind that says, "Good to see you, Dad." Without saying a word, I smiled back. Neither of us broke the agreement. Hey, I was still Mr. Henry. The lights dimmed. The CEO walked onto the stage. He thanked the clients. He congratulated the engineering department. Then he announced the night's final presentation. Our next speaker, he said, has led one of the most innovative infrastructure projects our company has ever undertaken. Richard Collins stood. The applause was immediate. He adjusted his jacket, shook a few hands, and walked confidently toward the stage. Ethan clapped with everyone else. Watching him do that hurt more than I expected. He was applauding the man who was about to steal a year of his life. Richard smiled as the first slide appeared behind him. A beautiful rendering of the Riverside Bridge project. I've always believed, Richard began, great engineering comes from great leadership. The audience nodded. He clicked to the next slide. Every calculation, every design choice, every safety innovation. I recognized them instantly. I'd seen those pages in Ethan's notebook. Richard spoke as though each idea had come from his own late nights, his own sacrifices, his own vision. Every lie sounded smoother than the one before it. I looked toward Ethan. At first, he seemed proud. Then, confused. Richard was describing details Ethan had never shared outside their project meetings. He glanced down at the printed program in his lap. There was only one name listed beneath the presentation. Richard Collins. No co-presenter. No acknowledgement. Nothing. I watched the realization spread across my son's face. Slowly, painfully, like a crack moving across glass. Richard reached the final slide. The room erupted into applause. The CEO walked back onto the stage carrying a crystal award. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "please join me in congratulating Richard Collins for his outstanding leadership." More applause. Richard accepted the award with practiced humility. "This recognition," he said, "means more than you'll ever know." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Not because I was angry, because the truth had waited long enough. I pushed my cleaning cart forward. Its wheels squeaked across the polished ballroom floor. The sound wasn't loud, but in a silent room, it might as well have been thunder. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. A security guard stepped toward me. "Sir," he whispered politely, "this area is for presenters." I nodded. "I know. I'm only here to return something." Richard looked irritated. His smile disappeared for the first time all evening. "What is this?" he asked. I reached into the supply pouch on my cart. Not dramatically, calmly, I pulled out a black leather notebook. Ethan's notebook, the one Richard thought no one had ever noticed. I held it carefully. "This was left behind after yesterday's rehearsal," I said. "I figured whoever created the bridge project would probably want it back." Richard's face lost every bit of color. For just a second, no one spoke. The CEO looked from the notebook to Richard, then to Ethan. "Mr. Collins," he asked quietly, "what exactly is that?" Richard swallowed. "It's—" He hesitated. "My working notes." I looked at him. Then I opened the notebook to the very first page. Every drawing, every handwritten calculation, every revision, signed, dated. One name appeared again and again. Ethan Walker. A murmur spread through the ballroom. Richard stepped toward me. "You've misunderstood." Before he could finish, a voice came from front row. Soft, but perfectly clear. "No." It was Ethan. He stood slowly. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from betrayal. He looked at Richard, then at the notebook, then back at the stage. I drew those designs. The room became completely silent. No applause, no whispers, just 500 people waiting to hear what would happen next. And for the first time that evening, Richard Collins looked like a man who finally realized. The quiet janitor had been paying attention all along. For several long seconds, no one moved. The ballroom was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner humming above us. The CEO stepped away from the microphone and walked directly toward me. "May I see the notebook?" he asked. I handed it to him. He didn't flip through it quickly. He studied it, page after page. Dates, handwritten calculations, bridge sketches, engineering corrections. Every few pages, Ethan's signature appeared in the corner. The CEO looked toward Ethan. "Did you write all of this?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "When did you start?" 11 months ago." The CEO turned another page, then another. Finally, he looked at Richard. "Would you mind explaining why your presentation contained these exact designs?" Richard forced a smile. "It's a misunderstanding. We worked as a team." The CEO didn't respond. Instead, he asked another question. Then why was Ethan's name removed from a presentation? Richard's confidence slipped for the first time. It was still being updated. The vice president of operations stood up from his table. He looked uncomfortable. Then he took a slow breath. That's not true. Every head in the ballroom turned toward him. He walked to the stage. I attended the planning meetings. He glanced at Richard before continuing. Ethan was supposed to present this project. Richard changed that decision 2 weeks ago. Richard's eyes widened. You don't know what you're saying. The vice president ignored him. I should have spoken sooner. I didn't. That was my mistake. The room fell silent again. One by one, other members of the engineering team began speaking. I remember Ethan leading the safety review. He solved the foundation problem. He stayed 3 weekends finishing the stress calculations. He trained half a department on the new modeling software. Every sentence added another piece to the truth. Richard looked around the room as though searching for someone to defend him. No one did. The CEO closed a notebook. He didn't raise his voice. Sometimes the calmest words carry the most weight. Richard Collins, you accepted recognition for work that wasn't yours. You intentionally removed a member of your own team from his project. You attempted to transfer him after taking credit for his achievements. Richard tried one last time. I can explain. The CEO shook his head. No, you've already explained. With your actions. He looked toward the director of human resources. I think this evening is over for Mr. Collins. 2 security officers approached quietly. Richard looked at Ethan, then at me. Finally, he lowered his head. Without another word, he walked out of the ballroom. No applause followed him, only silence. The CEO returned to the microphone. I owe someone an apology. He looked directly at Ethan. Our company talks a great deal about integrity. Tonight, a man pushing a cleaning cart reminded us what it actually looks like. He smiled. Ethan Walker, would you join me on stage? The applause began slowly, then grew louder. People stood, one row after another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet, not because someone told them to, because they wanted to be. Ethan walked toward the stage with tears in his eyes. The CEO handed him the Crystal Award. This belongs to you. Then he paused. I'd also like to announce something that wasn't on tonight's schedule. Effective Monday morning, Ethan Walker will become our newest senior project manager. The applause somehow became even louder. I didn't clap right away. I just stood there, watching my son, the little boy who used to build bridges from toy blocks on our living room floor, was now being trusted to build real ones. His mother would have loved this moment. I know she would have. After the banquet ended, people surrounded Ethan. Clients, engineers, executives. Everyone wanted to congratulate him. I quietly picked up my mop. My shift wasn't over yet. A few paper napkins had found their way onto the floor. Old habits are hard to break. As I turned toward the service hallway, I heard someone call out, "Dad!" Not Mr. Henry. Not quietly. "Dad!" The entire ballroom looked in our direction. Ethan walked across the room. Without caring who was watching, he wrapped his arms around me. I should have told everyone years ago. I smiled, told them what? That you're my father. I laughed softly. I've been your father your whole life. I didn't need an audience. He stepped back and looked at me. You know, I used to worry people would judge you because you clean floors. I shook my head. Son, there's no shame in honest work. The only dirty thing in this building was a lie. He smiled through his tears. So, what happens now? I looked around the ballroom, at the executives, the engineers, the cleaners, the waiters stacking chairs. Then I answered, tomorrow, you go back to building bridges, and I'll go back to cleaning floors. He frowned. You don't have to. No, I don't. But I think I will. He looked surprised. I rested a hand on his shoulder. This job reminded me of something people forget. The person everyone overlooks often sees the truth first. A month later, the company invited me back, not to clean, to speak during their leadership conference. Someone asked me what the greatest lesson of my life had been. I thought about it for a moment before answering. I spent 40 years building bridges, but the strongest bridge I ever built was the one between the truth and the courage to tell it. The room was quiet. Then they applauded, not because I had given a perfect speech, but because every person there knew someone like Richard, and every person there hoped they'd have the courage to become someone like Ethan, or maybe someone like the quiet old janitor who refused to let the truth stay hidden. Because titles fade, awards collect dust, corner offices eventually belong to someone else. But character is the only thing people remember after you've left the room.